We are here for our third session of Healthy Families Cooking Together. I'm really excited to see you all on this Wednesday afternoon. And last week was a lot of fun. I would love it if you would join in the chat and share if you had any opportunity to actually make the ramen recipe that we shared last week with Chef T, and or if you liked it. Oh, someone tried it with tofu. Just to share a little bit with you, we added some more extra spices to it, which was one of the tidbits that Chef T had mentioned, that we could try adding more and different spices to it. So we actually did try to make it more with the chilies and a little bit more spicy, and it was pretty good. Well, today we have a new recipe for you that I hope you like as well. It's quick and easy, and we're excited to hear all about it with Chef T. We have people coming in right now, but so we want to make sure that we say welcome. And then also we're going to take the chance to just review our Zoom etiquette type things, that we always ask that you make sure that your microphone is muted unless you come off to ask a question. And then we also encourage you and want you to use chat for questions. I'll be monitoring that chat as we're going through. So any questions you have for Chef T, we would love for you to throw those up in chat, and then we can get to them at the end of our presentation so that she can answer all of our questions, because I learned something new from her every day, and I'm sure she's going to share with you all what I learned today about peeling vegetables. So just an introduction, I am Lisa Vorth. I'm the administrative dietitian from Nutrition Services. And so in addition to helping with the menus and special diets and helping cafeterias serve food every day to your students, I also am engaged in and believe strongly and am very passionate about nutrition education and working with students and classrooms and families to learn more about having a healthy habits and learning tricks to just make sure that your day is healthy. So we all know that cooking and what we eat is so important, and so any little tidbits that we can learn today is always a blessing to make our days go easier and make sure that we're getting healthy food for ourselves and for our families. We also have Heriberto here with us, and we'd like to say a big thank you to Paul, who's doing our translations for us as well. We really appreciate this partnership that we have today. So we're going to get started right away here. We also want to remember that it's because of Health Education Council, our partner in our school district, of partnering with us to bring nutrition education and bring all these services to us, that we're able to be here today, as they are funding Chef T and our recipes that we're trying. And today is whole grains, healthy fats, and sodium, in addition to the recipe that Chef T is going to be sharing with us. And we are going to go straight to Chef TonJala Mack, and she's going to get started sharing with us her recipe. We're going to go first with reading the recipe, because we all know that that is important to make sure that you're assembling your ingredients and you know what you're doing and you've gathered everything you need. So she's going to read the recipe, and then she's going to go right into preparation today.
Okay. And welcome to session 3, which is chicken vegetable soup with kale. Okay, for your recipe this week, we have a 1/2 cup of peeled onion chopped up, 3/4 cups of chopped carrots, 2 teaspoons of vegetable oil, a teaspoon of ground pine, 2 cloves of garlic peeled and diced, 3 cups of canned low sodium chicken broth, 3/4 cups of tomatoes diced, 1 cup of cubed cooked skinless chicken, 1 cup of cooked brown rice, and 2 cups of chopped carrot. This is actually one of my favorite recipes. We're going into fall, and fall just happens to be one of my favorite seasons because I don't like it when it's too hot or when it's too cold, and fall fits right there in the middle. And it's also soup season and stew season. And I love making soups and stews. This soup, I wouldn't actually call it a soup because if you look at your recipe, there's just as much vegetables and product in the soup as there is broth. So it's going to be more like a brothy stew. So it's going to be thick and it's going to be hearty. So let's go ahead, because it's going to take a couple minutes to cook. Let's go ahead and start with our recipe. And the first thing we're going to do, see, I chopped up all my vegetables and got all my prep done ahead of time. We're going to use a little bit of canola oil. We're just using a couple spoonfuls. And that's just to saute the onions. And saute the carrots. And we're going to go ahead and start those to cooking. Okay, and while they're cooking, and getting a little tender, I wanted to talk with you guys about peelers. Okay, so this is a standard peeler. This one has a little cushion and stuff. Usually there's silver and this part is just straight. If you look at the peeler, it has 2 blades. And most people take it to use the peeler. They take and they peel their stuff like this. And I've always wondered why it was done that way. Okay, when I asked about the peeler and the 2 sides, the most common response I get is because it's an ambidextrous tool, so you can use it with your right hand or your left hand. But I thought it was something different. Okay, so this is the way I use my peeler to peel my carrot. You see, I have the carrot, I have it at the end. Then I go back and forth. This part is done. Whole carrot peeled. Now, isn't that a little easier than doing this? The only time I do like this is if I'm going to use ribbons. And when you hear something they talk about vegetable ribbons and noodles, they're actually talking about doing it with a peeler like this, just making a thin slice. So that's just a little helpful little tidbit. I don't know how much it's going to be for you, but maybe it's a little something you could use. So we're sauteing the carrots and the onions and getting them nice and tender. The good thing about this soup is that it's a good leftover soup. The rice, if you have rice for dinner one day, just make a little bit of extra rice so you can use it for your soup. That's what I did. I did the same thing with the chicken breast. It asked for a cup of cubed skinless chicken. I actually made an extra chicken breast when I was making chicken, and that's what I'm using for the soup. Also, because I'm all about flavor, when I did the chicken, you know how when you bake chicken or roast chicken in the oven, you get a little bit of juice in the pan? I also kept that juice in this here because I'm going to use that for my soup. Okay, so my onions and my carrots are done. Now, I don't want to get them too soft because they're going to still be in the broth. And so after you do that, you add in your thyme, your garlic, and remember, those are the aromatics. We're going to go ahead, and I usually get my chicken broth in a carton like this. And I get it like this simply because, as I mentioned, almost every chance I get, I am a big fan of shopping at the dollar store and the 99-cent store. So why go get a can for $1 when you could get twice as much for the same dollar? Okay, here's the 3 cups of chicken broth. We're going to go ahead and put that in the pot with the soup. Now I asked for low sodium chicken broth. And that just means that in the chicken broth, they didn't put any salt in it. But I don't know about other cans. I'm guessing maybe other manufacturers and stuff may put salt or something in the broth, but even if I'm making the chicken stock at home, I don't put salt in it. So we have the broth in there. And so if you can't find non-sodium chicken broth, just use the chicken broth that you can find, but just make sure you compensate for the fact that there is a little bit of salt in the actual chicken broth. And so you don't want to add salt to your product until after you get everything together, and then you taste it to see if it needs it. And so that in there, we're going to go ahead, we're going to add the chicken in. We're going to put the rice in. See, that's why I said this is a quick and easy meal, because you're just using leftovers. Besides cooking the onions and the carrots, there's nothing to cook. Everything else is cooked. And so you're just basically putting everything together and bringing it up to temperature. Okay, so we have our chicken and everything in here. And here are our tomatoes. And so our recipe calls for brown rice. Let's go ahead and get our kale in there. But if you don't have brown rice, you can go ahead and use white rice. You can also use converted rice, which is a partially cooked rice. And that's like Uncle Ben's or something that's converted. Or you could use like instant rice or a minute rice. You just have to make sure to adjust your cook time and adjust your recipe for the type of rice you use. Remember, if you're using brown rice takes a little longer to cook than the white rice. And so it will actually hold better in your soup because white rice will tend to get mushy quicker than the brown rice will. Okay, and so we have everything in our pot. And so from this point, we just have to let it simmer. And then after we let it simmer, we'll come back and adjust it. So while we're letting it go ahead and simmer, I'm going to go ahead and send you back to Lisa so she could talk to you about grains and sodium and nutrition.
Welcome back. I did mention that it is starting to smell so good in here. It's all the onions and the garlic and all of that. And it really does increase your appetite. It makes you ready to eat good food. So that's another reason why we really encourage families to use those types of things and build your recipes with your aromatic foods, because it actually does trigger your mouth to get ready to eat, and it encourages the kids to get their appetite up. So we're going to get started on our presentation, and Joanna will be joining us now to share with us a little bit about some of the main topics that we're talking about today.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so we can get started, and we're going to start today talking about saturated fats. So we're going to be talking about, choosing and using healthy fats. So talking about saturated fats, so healthy fats are what your body needs to function properly, and they can be found in whole foods such as avocados and fish, also in nuts and seeds. And fats and oils are also extracted from whole foods for use in cooking. And some fats and oils are health promoting while others are not. And some examples of those that aren't the best for you are the saturated fats. And those come mostly from animals and coconut, and they're mostly solid at room temperature. So that's a way for you to identify if it's a saturated fat. And they can be unhealthy in large amounts, and they can be unhealthy when very processed or overheated. And they are found in dairy products like butter and cream, and in fatty meats, as well as in coconut products. The next slide. And then next is unsaturated fats. So these are the healthier fats. And some examples of those are monounsaturated, and those come mostly from plants, and those are very healthy, and but they can be unhealthy when they're overheated. And those can be found in peanut products, and some nuts and seeds, and their oils, as well as avocados and olive oil. And then there's the polyunsaturated, and those come from plants and animals, especially found in fish. And those are healthy in limited amounts, and they can be unhealthy when they're processed or overheated. And you can find those in nuts and seeds and their oils, as well as corn oil, soy oil, and in some fish. Next slide. Can we go to the next slide, Lisa? So then we have trans fats, and those are mostly unsaturated from plant oils, and they act like solid saturated fats in cooking, but they are more stable, and these are unhealthy as well. And these are found in hydrogenated fats and oils, so they're used in mostly processed foods. And you can see some in the slide, the pictures of the food that contains the trans fats. So those are the ones that you really want to avoid. Next slide. And even some healthy fats, they can become unhealthy when they're rancid or overheated, like we talked about. And then the smoke point is the temperature at which a fat or oil begins to burn. So that's when it becomes overheated. And that's something that Chef D had talked about previously. And she had mentioned olive oil because that one has a high smoke point. So that's an example of something that's a good fat but can become unhealthy if it's overheated. And once a fat or oil starts smoking, it is unhealthy to eat. And you also want to never use oil with a bitter taste or odor, because that means that it's rancid and it's not good anymore. So you want to use olive oil for salad dressings and low heat cooking. And then you want to use butter or coconut oil or canola oil for medium heat cooking. And you can use other refined vegetable oils for high heat cooking. And you want to limit the total use of those. And you definitely want to avoid using the hydrogenated fats or lard when you're cooking, because those are very unhealthy. Next slide. And then if you want to go through all these, Lisa. So we're going to talk about making half your grains whole, and why should you choose whole grains. If you want to click next, yeah. Okay. So whole grains are usually darker in color and stronger in flavor than refined grains and flours. So when eating whole grains, it's been shown to lower the risk for diabetes and heart disease, as well as high cholesterol and high blood pressure. Any whole grain, so here's an example of a whole grain and like the different parts of it. It contains the germ, the endosperm, and the bran, while a processed grain only contains the endosperm. And the germ and the bran are the most nutrient-rich parts of the grain, and the ones that contain the highest in fiber. So when you're buying, whole grain food, you want to check the ingredient list to make sure that you're getting a truly whole grain product. So when you're reading that ingredient list, the first ingredient should be something like whole wheat and not just wheat. And sometimes, it can be like if you're buying bread and it looks like it's whole wheat, or it says that it's whole wheat, you want to make sure you read the ingredient list, because it could say something like, enriched whole wheat flour or enriched wheat flour, and that it's not whole wheat flour. So you want to make sure that it doesn't have any of those words. And some examples of refined grain products, so the ones that only contain the endosperm, is the white pasta, white bread, as well as most cakes and cookies and pastries, and food items that are whole grain. So they have all parts of the grain, the bran, the endosperm, and the germ, are oats and brown rice, as well as whole wheat. And then quinoa is also another one. And you also want to, the keyword whole. And to have a diet rich in fiber, it's good to choose whole grains, because it aids in digestion, and it also keeps you full or longer. So you want to make sure, you're getting as much whole grain food as you can. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a quick little game that we could play with you guys. You guys can answer in the chat, and that way you guys can see, if you guys can identify the different whole grains that are here. And the word bank, that's some of those options. So the answers are either brown rice, wheat berries, quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat, or oats. And as we mentioned, whole grains are a nutritious filling alternative to refined grain foods like white pasta. There's many different ways for you to use them when cooking. You can use them in soups or as salad bases, as your breakfast cereals, or as side dishes. So there's many different ways to incorporate them into your food and to switch to make those changes. So if you guys want to take a guess on what you think each item is, in the chat, you can write, number 1 is this, number 2 is this, and I'll go through them as well. I think probably the easiest ones to identify would be number 4, 5, and 6. Let me look at the chat. Yeah, number 5 is oats. Yes, that's correct. And then number 3, Gina said it's quinoa for 3, 4 is rice, and then 5 is oats. So number 3 is actually amaranth, and that one's a different kind of whole grain. And number 4 is actually brown rice. I know the picture might not look like it's brown, but it's brown rice, and that's the kind of rice that you want to make sure you're consuming instead of white rice. And I know a lot of people it's difficult to cook with brown rice just because it takes a longer time to cook, and it has a more tougher taste as well. But for it to get soft like the white rice, you just have to cook it a little bit longer. Yes, and then Lisa, if you just want to go through and show the answers for all of them.
We have buckwheat.
Yes. Number 1 is buckwheat. And if you guys yourselves want to share in the chat as well, if you have cooked with any of these whole grain and what you've made or how you cook with them, that would be great too. That way we can all learn from each other. Yeah, so number 2 is wheat berries, and then number 3, amaranth. And some of these I don't really know how to cook with them either. Just I think I know how to make the bottom 3, which is brown rice. And then number 5, like we mentioned, is oats. And then number 6 is quinoa. Yeah, so definitely I still have a lot to learn as well, and different ways to incorporate these whole grains. But, you know, just making those small changes and getting used to the taste can take some time. So just, you know, incorporating it slowly into your meals.
Okay.
Go to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about sodium and a healthy blood pressure. And Chef T did talk about the sodium content when it comes to, you know, like making soups. And I think this goes for any, you know, recipe that you're making at home as well. And a desirable blood pressure for, you know, for everyone is for it to be 120/80. And if you click, you can click next, Lisa, to go through all the items on the page. And if you have a high blood pressure, it's considered high if it's 140 over 90 or above that. So you want to make sure that you have your high blood pressure, if you have your blood pressure checked at least once a year. And you can do that either at a doctor's office or, you know, anywhere else, or you could even buy like a blood pressure machine at the store, and you can, you know, check it at home yourself. And high blood pressure means that your body is working harder than it should to move blood to all parts of your body. And high blood pressure, it raises your risk of, you know, having a stroke or a heart attack, and as well as having kidney problems or eye problems, and, you know, the worst one, which is death. So you want to make sure that you're watching your sodium content, and that, you know, you're checking your blood pressure so you can get that number lower. Let me go to the next slide. So ways that to help prevent high blood pressure is to, you know, stay active. You know, you don't necessarily have to be going to the gym every day, just even walking for a few minutes, and also reducing your sodium intake and reducing your alcohol intake, and maintaining a overall healthy weight. Okay, we go to the next slide. So then this is just some true or false facts if you guys want to answer, if you guys know about limiting sodium from foods. So number 1 is healthy individuals should keep intake under 2,300 milligrams a day, and those with high blood pressure or high risk should keep intake to under 1,500 milligrams a day. I know this one can be confusing, so, you know, whether you know if it's true or false. And then number 2, whole fruits and vegetables do not contain sodium. Number 3, soy sauce, canned foods, and seafood can be high sodium foods. Number 4, potassium helps to balance the sodium in your body. Therefore, eating plenty of high potassium fruits and vegetables may help maintain a healthy blood pressure. And number 5, a food with less than 140 milligrams of sodium per serving can be labeled a low sodium food. So let me look at the chat, or Lisa too as well, if you want to take a look at the chat. Egberto said number 1, true or false. So we can go through them, Lisa, if you want to click through so we can see those answers. Yes, so number 1 would be true. Number 2 is false. You know, all foods contain an amount of sodium. Whole fruits and vegetables, they contain, you know, a lesser amount, especially because they're, you know, in their whole, you know, natural form, they're not processed. Number 3, soy sauce, canned foods, and seafood can be high sodium foods. And that is true just because, you know, soy sauce does tend to be very salty. For canned food items, they do add a lot of sodium in there, as well as seafood. So it's just important to read the label when you're buying those canned items. as well as, like Heriberto said, you can rinse them with water. And then number 4, potassium helps to balance the sodium in your body. That's true. So if you do have, high blood pressure, you want to make sure that you're eating foods that have a lot of potassium, so it could help you, balance that out and lower your blood pressure. And the number 5 is also true. And I think we are done after this with our lessons, and we could pass it back to Chef T.
Okay. We're going to pass it back to Chef T, and she is going to check in on our recipe.
Okay, welcome back. So all this time, your soup should have been simmering. And if you put yours together like I did right now, your house probably smells wonderful because the soup is smelling really good. And the good thing about it is, like I said, it's kind of a leftover soup. So it is actually done at this point. I just wanted to pull mine down and kind of show you what it looks like. You see a little bit of broth, but you see all the stuff in it. It looks really good. And like I said, it smells wonderful. So at this point, what you have to do, because if you look at your recipe, we put nothing besides the thyme. We put no salt in it, no pepper in it. So this is the thyme you take before you serve it, and you adjust your seasonings. So to know what you're going to need to do to it, you actually have to taste it. Oh, that is pretty good. But it can use a little bit of salt and pepper. Okay. And so we'll go ahead and let that cook for a couple minutes more. Now, suppose you wanted to take the same soup and turn it into a vegetarian soup. All you would do is, instead of using chicken broth, get vegetable broth. If you can't find vegetable broth is very easy to make. All it is, this soup itself needs carrots, it needs onions. And so what you do is take all the parts that you would throw away from the carrots and the onions, and you put those in the pot, maybe add a little bit of celery, the ends or something if you have some, and you put it in some water. This soup only requires 3 cups. So you just take those and put them in a pot of water, bring it up to a boil, turn your heat down to a simmer, and just let it simmer for about 30 minutes. And voila, that's vegetable broth. Keep in mind, it's not going to taste much of anything except for like vegetable water, which is what vegetable broth is. And so you'll have to take it and adjust your seasonings, but of course it will be fine for what you need to do with it. You can also take this and instead of putting chicken in it, use beans. You can even take and put some noodles in there. Now, the only thing is if you use noodles, you have to be careful because noodles absorb water, and the more water they absorb, the softer they become. And so you don't want to cook it so much that it totally disintegrates your noodles. You can also take this and you can cook it in a crock pot. And you just take, if you do it in a crock pot, you literally take everything and just put it all in the crock pot. Put it on the lowest setting and go on about your day. And when you come home in the evening from work, or come back in from being out and about, your soup is done. You just have to adjust your seasonings like we just did. And so let's go ahead and dish a bowl of this up so you can actually see it. Look at this. Doesn't that look good? It looks good, it smells good, and what a way to put some smells in your house. Okay, so this is pretty much how you make this chicken vegetable soup with kale. Like I said, it's a leftover soup, very easy in that little bit of time. We have a pot of soup that you can feed your family with. Remember, if you want to make more, all you do is increase the ingredients you put in there. You can also, you don't have to use the carrots and the onions like I did. Use whatever vegetables are left over in your house. Go get it, go grab a couple cans. I mean, what's in your cupboard? Go get something that's in your cupboard, you know, put that in there. You don't have kale, omit the kale, put something else in there. You can literally make this soup, make this recipe your own. So you can add a couple cans of beans in there. You can add some canned tomatoes. There's all kinds of different things you could use to make this more of a signature soup. Okay, and so with that in mind, that's your soup. And if Lisa and Johanna don't have anything else that they want to add, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
Oh, yes, we have lots of questions. I just can't say enough how good it smells in here from just such a quick soup that that you put together in almost like a half an hour. And we can't really see very good, but I keep thinking about what you said, how it's almost like a stew. And I really like that idea of it. So it's more than just, you know, getting like a soup, like you open a can of soup and make that up. It feels homemade, but it's thicker and more like dinner.
It's really filling. It would be, it's really filling as a dish.
We actually do have some questions. We had some questions and some thoughts when we were looking at the whole grains, and we were curious if there was other grains that we could use for this soup, or and then also we want to know what grains you've tried and how you prepare them. So have you done things with quinoa and some of those other specialty grains?
Yeah, there are a lot of other grains you can use. I like quinoa. I actually like tabbouleh too, so which is bulgur. So you can use any of those in there, but you have to keep in mind that it will change the kind of soup it is. Okay, so you can basically put anything, like I said, it's a leftover soup. You could take it and put potatoes in it and make it a potato soup, a chicken and vegetable soup with potatoes. You could make it, like I said, a chicken noodle and vegetable soup. If you don't have kale, you could omit the greens altogether, or you could put chard in there. You could put collard greens in there. You could put mustard greens in there. You could put spinach in there. You know, the ideas are endless. You want a little bit color, like I said, I'm a big fan of peppers. I would have put red peppers in it because I like red peppers and I like the red color throughout. So there are a lot of different things you could do to it. So you don't necessarily have to use the brown rice. Like I said, you can use white rice, you can use minute rice, you can use converted rice. When you get, if you use like the boxes of Uncle Ben's and you cook one of those for dinner, you end up with a little bit of that left over, throw it in your soup. That's a good way to get rid of leftovers without having to throw them away and without having them the same way you ate them the first time.
I've been playing with my rice cooker a little bit, and I started playing with the quinoa and trying to make the quinoa in the rice cooker. And I found out that was a real quick and easy way to do that. And I've been using some chicken broth and then just putting it in, just like I would make rice in one of those rice cooker pots. And it's been really fun to play with that a little bit too. And I was, thinking, well, how nice it would be to be able to maybe play a little bit with adding that to soup, or even playing with some of those other grains as well. So thank you. We did have a question, and I don't have any the answer, but I'm curious if you've heard about this before. Is it better to eat the finished grains, which I'm thinking is the cooked grain, versus the dry grain? Have you heard the word finished grains before? I'm going to look it up and then we'll give the answer.
I haven't actually heard of finished grains, because the cooked grains are like the brown rice, the whole wheat pasta and stuff, and you can't really eat those in the dry state. I mean, you can, but that would be kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, so all I know is to cook them.
Okay, and I'll look this up too, so I'll have your answer for you next week to our participant that was asking about that. I haven't really researched anything about the finished grains or whether it was healthy to eat dry grains or whatnot, so I'll definitely check on that one. We also had another comment about if you are using quinoa, to make sure that you rinse it really well. So maybe the way that it's packaged, or depending on what manufacturer. The information that someone shared was that the quinoa can have a something that needs to be rinsed off. So just to make sure to share that with everyone, to make sure you're rinsing that real well before you start.
Lisa?
Yes.
If you're going to use grain, period, even if you're using brown rice or white rice, you should, as a rule, rinse it first to get some of the starch and stuff off of it.
Oh, thank you. Good tidbit. And then I think I really liked how you shared how to make a veggie broth, because I think sometimes we can be such a meat-centered, our dinners and stuff, like we have to have our meat and our potatoes, and so we don't often think about grabbing veggie broth and different types of cans of beans, and how that can make kind of a stew for us without having to eat the animal products. So if we are looking for more plant-based options for some of our meals, or if like we're thinking about eating more vegetarian, then this recipe is really easy to modify back into that more plant-based meal. We did also, Chef T, we had a question about Instapots too. Have you worked with one of those before?
No, I haven't used the Instapot, but my daughter-in-law has. She swears by Instapot. And she says that it cooks everything a little easier and a little quicker. To me, it sounded like a crock pot, but just didn't take as long to cook. So I'm guessing that to make something like this in an Instapot, I'm not quite sure how an Instapot works, because outside of seeing the outside, I've never even looked inside one. So I don't know whether it has heating elements inside or heating elements outside. I don't know whether you cook in a pot that's placed in the pot or actually cook in the Instapot itself. So without knowing exactly how it works, I can't tell you exactly how to make this in the Instapot, but I will say that if the Instapot has heating elements in it and you actually put a cooking dish inside of it to cook, all you'd have to do is put all of your stuff inside that cooking dish and put it in the Instapot and cook it that way. If it doesn't have the inserts inside and it's more like a crock pot, it would be the same thing as when you do it in a crock pot, put everything inside and just let it cook.
Well, that was about all the questions that I saw. I'm excited to try this recipe, and kind of I can't wait to even come out there and see it, because It doesn't look as soupy as what I'm used to seeing for chicken soup. So I'm really excited to see that it's thicker and makes more of a meal. And then we also know how many food groups are represented in that soup. Does anybody know? You can chat it. I'll put it in the chat too, or you can come off your mute if you want to share if you know how many food groups are in this soup. FT, do you know? It sounds like nobody knows.
Actually, there are 3. You have your meat group, your vegetable group, and your grain group are represented in the soup.
And thank you, Gina, for answering. So yeah, it's really nice that you're having a meal that has 3 food groups in it and your main course there. And then what else could we add to this meal to complete our My Plate? What other things could be served with it? Imagine this is your dinner tonight and you're serving this on the table. And we could, just thinking about when we serve our family. And I did this when my little ones were young too. It's like, oh, what other food group can I add to this to put on the table? All right, we've got milk from the dairy group. That's awesome. Oh, homemade bread would be nice, or toast. That would add some extra grains to go with the rice that's in the soup. Yes, yogurt could be, you could even use the yogurt for the dairy group in place of the milk or with the milk.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like we're missing 1 food group. Maybe it's something we could have for dessert. Can anyone think what that is? Yes, good job. An apple, or you could do a little, sliced berries, or the peaches and plums and things like that are really good right now. There's still even cantaloupe, and there's still a little bit of cantaloupe and watermelon, which make a nice dessert too. So incorporating all of those food groups into that meal can be challenging. I mean, we've all had those days when it's like we're happy that we've made a box of macaroni and cheese and it's on the plate, but thinking more about what else can I add to this to make sure that we've got all the food groups represented, or at least, moving in that direction. So I think that goes a long way with making sure that your kids are getting exposed to all the different food groups as well. And then hopefully eventually they're going to be liking them. So when we're making the time to put the vegetables on the plate and offering fruit for dessert and things like that, it does help establish those healthy habits. So it looks like we're finishing up a little bit earlier today.
We do have one question from Shelly.
Oh, good.
I don't think we talked about this. It's for Chef T. She said if it can be frozen and for how long.
Oh, nice.
Okay. The soup, yes, you can make it ahead of time. And I usually, because I live by myself, whatever I make, I usually make enough and I take it and I freeze it. So to freeze it, you'd have to chill it down and then put it in a Tupperware container and a plastic bag or whatever, and put it in the freezer, let it freeze. And it will actually stay for a month or 2 while it's frozen. And when you get ready to cook it, then you have to take it out and let it thaw out. And I usually take it and put the whole bag in a bowl or something in the refrigerator and let it actually thaw out in the refrigerator. And then when you put it in the pot to cook it, or in the microwavable bowl to microwave it or whatever, you have to check the consistency and everything. If it's too thick, add a little water, heat it up, and as everything starts blending it together, you heat it up for a minute or so, take it out, stir everything up, put it back in, heat it up, and do that when it gets up to temperature. Make sure you check your seasonings, because when stuff is cold, the seasonings are actually reduced, so they're not as strong. So make sure that the seasoning is the way you want it. If not, go ahead and adjust the seasoning, bring it up to temperature, and it's good to go. The only thing you have to remember is this is just like with anything else. If you cook it and you freeze it, when you thaw it, you have to use it. You can't thaw it and then decide you don't want it and refreeze it again. When you thaw it the first time, you need to go ahead and use it.
So those are great tips, because sometimes you forget, well, can I refreeze it? And then, you definitely want to make sure that you're keeping your food not just safe from bacteria and whatnot, but also so it's still good quality by making sure. That's a great question. Are there any more questions? You're welcome to come off mute and ask Chef T yourself. Anyone has anything they want to add, or any kitchen hacks in the way that that you make a certain recipe that you want to share with us? We'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, too, there's a link in here, and Joanna may talk about it more, but there's a event at the Sacramento Library this weekend, and we encourage you all to check that out. And we want to let you know that we have workbooks to follow along with, like a chapter per each session that we're doing, that will be coming to you. And I know Heriberto mentioned this at the beginning. They got hung up at the print shop, and but they're working on them now, and we're going to mail them to you. So when you registered to get your Zoom link for this course, we have your information, and we'll be mailing you this along with copies of the recipes. And then at the end, we also will have some incentive items. Chef T put together an amazing little kit for you. So you're going to get a colander and some other fun kitchen gadgets that are going to help with food preparation. And those will be delivered to you as well in some format. We're working on how that's going to look. But there is definitely stuff coming. Now, when you get your books, your workbooks, there's a lot of little worksheets and stuff in there, but different things like on how to make a grocery list and how to make a menu. So you'll be able to fill those out, and we'll be providing a parent version and a student version. So you'll have one to work with your kids as well. So I think that about sums it up. If there's no more questions, do you have any more to add, Joanna?
No, just about the event on Saturday that Heriberto shared in the chat about that we're doing with the SAC Public Library. So it's going to be virtual. So this Saturday from 11 to 12, it's going to be in Spanish. And then next Saturday on the 23rd, it'll be in English at the same time. And, we're inviting parents and kids to join. We're going to be doing like a little nutrition lesson for the kids about, healthy foods and the healthy different categories. And then we're going to be doing a healthy food demo as well. So if you guys want to join, you can sign up on that link in the chat. So the first one will be this Saturday in Spanish. And thank you all again for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. And we will see you same place, same time next week on the 20th.
Yeah.
October 20th at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much for being here today. We hope you have a wonderful week and that you enjoy the recipe, and we're excited to hear how it went.